Good morning.
Good morning.
How are you?
Great.
Very well, thank you. It's really a privilege to be here this morning. I work at a college. That's been my life's work. I've been doing it for over 30 years, different schools around the country. Currently, I serve as the provost of the Clearwater campus of St. Petersburg College. I have been so pleased to be able to serve on the Salvation Army Advisory Board. The mission of the board is one that parallels many of the things that we do at the college. I find that many of the activities and services that the Army provides support many of our students. I don't have an in-depth knowledge about the Army. My grandmother was a Salvationist, but I was raised Roman Catholic. And that's of personal interest to me, of course, but it's kind of relevant to what I want to talk about here a little bit this morning, too. I have, however, been astonished at the story of William Booth and the telegram that he sent to his officers consisting of one word, others. And as we know, he could have chosen a lot of other words besides others. He could have said care, he could have said giving, but he chose the word others. And so I thought if you would bear with me this morning, I might talk briefly about that word others and how it relates to what I do at SPC and why I think it's so important. You know, we all have our tribes. We all think of the people that belong to our group. You know, most people will take care of themselves. Surprisingly, not everyone will take care of themselves, but most people do. And most people will take care of their families and their extended family and probably their neighbors and friends. My neighbors, Chuck and Michelle and Art, I look after their house when they're gone, and they look after my house when I'm gone. I mean, we care for each other. We even have our church families that we care for. And that's, I think, a very human thing to do. I think we've been taught that through generations of living in groups and in tribes. We have been taught to distinguish between ourselves and others. Somewhere out there, there's a circle that we have, and outside that circle are the others that William Booth was telling us we need to serve. And, you know, this tendency to divide people into inside and outside, you know, ours and theirs, it manifests itself in kind of, you know, harmless ways. We see here in Florida, at least, the school gang signs, you know, this one and this one, right? The Gator Nation, we've all heard of that. But even among Christians, you know, we have our groups, right? And we define ourselves as to, well, pick an issue, baptism. You know, do we baptize with sprinkling? Do we baptize with full immersion? Do we baptize infants? Do we baptize adults? You know, is it one time down or three times over backwards? Personally, I was baptized as an infant, but I also was baptized as an adult. I wasn't sure which was right, but I wanted to be sure I was covered, so I got it. We talk about, you know, we're such arcane things like the Eucharist. What is consubstantiation? You know, what does that mean? Is this really Christian music? We don't sing those hymns. Those are not Christian hymns. You know, we get into all that. And, you know, I'm being kind of facetious with it, but think about all the persecutions that have taken place among Christians, one on the other, over some of those issues, the others. You know, my name is Vittetoe. It was a French name, and I am told that the Vittetoes came to America because they were Huguenots escaping religious persecution. Wouldn't they have been shocked to find that their descendants were Roman Catholics? I grew up in rural Iowa. By the way, I saw an Iowa license plate in the parking lot. Are there some fellow Iowegians here? Could I see? Where are the Iowe? There they are, right there. Okay. So you're part of my Iowa tribe, right? Right? But you're Cerro Gordo County, right? Well, I'm Appanoose, so we're not that close. But I grew up in rural Iowa, and as an adult, I attended for many years a little church, a country church called the Church of the Brethren. Anybody ever heard of the Church of the Brethren? It's very small. It's mostly found in rural areas. They are related to the Mennonites, although they would be very careful to point out that we are not Mennonites either. But it was a country church, and it was made up of people who primarily were family farmers, and they helped each other. I mean, we were like a big extended family. When you live on a family farm, you have to help each other. It's the way you survive. If you get injured and it's time to put the crop in or take the crop out, or you're ill, you have to have neighbors that are willing to do that for you. And I've done it. I've been, we drive the combine and get the beans when somebody was ill, or, the hogs get out, you got to get them and bring them back in. A lot of people are late for church on Sunday because they were putting the hogs in or something like that. And it's a simple church, we were farmers, and, you wore your clod hoppers to church, and, we didn't believe in fancy stuff. We helped each other. But that was our family. Those were the people that were part of our tribe. And I'm not saying that we wouldn't help people outside, but that's how we identified with. And we took care of each other, but that was a little bit self-serving too, when you think about it. We were all white, and we're all working people, and we all shared the same basic religious beliefs. We weren't others. If you will bear with me, I'm not a biblical scholar, and I'm not going to try to explicate an entire book of the Bible, but I would like to touch on the book of Jonah to illustrate what I'm trying to say about the notion of others. As a kid, that's such a great book. The whale is fascinating. The sea monster gobbled you up, and you lived in the body of the whale for 3 days. It's a wonderful and strange book as a kid. It's even more strange, I think, as an adult when you read what actually Jonah did and what he said. But I love him because he's so human, and I love him because he sounds like an educator. God tells Jonah to go to the city of Nineveh, where there are 600,000 people who neither know their right hand from their left. And I'm sure that's his figure of speech for telling us that these people are ignorant. I'm sure they're not all dyslexic, right? But he's talking about the Ninevites, right? And the Ninevites are not of the tribe of Jonah, right? Jonah's a Hebrew. These are Ninevites. And they're wicked. We're not exactly told what they are or what they do, but they're naughty. They're naughty Ninevites. And he doesn't want to go to help the people, the naughty Ninevites in Nineveh. And so he flees. And eventually, of course, God, through the fish, he gets him to come back to Nineveh and make his prophecy that, it's straighten up in 40 days or else. Well, the interesting thing is, you would think that with Jonah's heart for God, that he would be rejoicing when God chose not to destroy the city of Nineveh. But he didn't. He was disappointed, right? In fact, he was so disappointed, he said, I might as well be dead. Just kill me. I don't care. I'm so disappointed. I might as well be dead. And then God decides to school Jonah a little bit. So Jonah builds himself a little bower, and God causes a vine to grow to shade him so that he won't be suffering from the heat. And Jonah enjoys the shade, but then God causes the vine to wither. And now, once again, Jonah says, I might as well be dead. Just kill me. This is so terrible. Just kill me now. Life's not worth living. And God says to him, you were ready for me to kill 600,000 people who didn't know their right hand from their left. And just to make the point, he also says, and their cows. But you're all upset because this vine, which you didn't cause to grow, you didn't have anything to do with, but you benefited from the shade, you're upset about the vine. And I think that somewhere down in the deep recesses of our hearts, it's easy to say, those other people, they kind of deserve what they get, They were naughty. They should be punished. It's their fault they're in the situation they're in. But that's not the spirit of the Salvation Army that I've observed. What I've observed from the Army is a cheerful willingness to help people without regard to their race or their particular religious beliefs or where they are in their life. They have drug problems or alcohol problems or whatever those things might be. The Army has always been willing to help them. There was a book written in the 1980s when I was a child. It was called, you're laughing, it was called When Bad Things Happen to Good People. Some of you may remember it, written by Harold Kushner, rabbi. And it was attempting to deal with that really kind of existential question of how is it that God allows devastating things to happen to people whose heart is with God and who are trying to do God's work. He's omnipotent. Why does he let that happen? And it was an attempt to explain that and talk about why that happens. I think another book could be written today which would be almost equally as powerful, but the title of that book would be When Good Things Happen to Bad People. Because just like Jonah, I think sometimes that's hard for us to accept. Why is it that the people who aren't living right, people outside my tribe, why is it that good things happen to them? Why is it they're not being punished the way that we think they should be? Now, my role is working in a community college, and if you don't know about a community college, they're open access. We accept everyone. We don't care what your grade point is. We don't care how many schools you've been to or flunked out. In a sense, we don't care about your previous educational sins. Even if you've attended the University of Florida formerly, we will still accept you. But there are also people with a lot of needs and people that we have to work with because, we get people that, well, I'm sorry you didn't make it to class for 3 days, but it's not my fault that you have kids to take care of. It's not my fault that your car broke down. Well, that's not how we operate. That's not who we are. We reach out to people and try to find, we try to be ready to meet the students where the students are. And I think that's why I feel that the Army's mission and the mission that I work with every day are so congruent. We really try to meet people where they are. We have a food pantry on our campus. We try to support women. We have recently received a grant to provide childcare vouchers to women for childcare because that's a major challenge for women to get through school. So, in the end, I guess the thing that impresses me most and that makes me so happy to be a part of the Salvation Army is the fact that I feel as though the Salvation Army does God's assigned work. This is what God has asked us to do. Go out and help others. But the Army doesn't try to do the work that God does. We don't try to do his job. We let God be God. We don't judge those people. We do what we are supposed to do, and we let God take care of that part. That's his business. I want to thank you for listening to me for a few minutes this morning. I know I kind of rambled on a little bit. Again, it's a privilege and an honor to be a part of this board. I mentioned that my grandmother was a Salvationist, and I know I never met her, but I know she's here today, and I know she would be pleased. Thank you very much.